In 1863, a young Russian count, newly married, settled at his family's country estate and pulled a stack of paper toward himself. What he wanted to write was not an ordinary novel. He was planning a vast work that would carry the armies of Napoleon into Russia, the battlefields and the ballrooms, the generals and the 16-year-old girls, all onto the same pages. That man was Leo Tolstoy. The book he wrote is considered one of the greatest novels in world literature, War and Peace. So what is actually inside this enormous book? Let me tell you the story. Leo Tolstoy was born in 1828 into a noble landowning family in Russia. As a young man, he served in the military, holding a position as an artillery officer during the Crimean War, and he witnessed the siege of Sevastopol firsthand. That experience became one of the foundations for how vividly he could later write about war. He began writing War and Peace in 1863. He had recently married and settled at Yasnaya Polyana, his family estate. An early version of the novel was serialized between 1865 and 1867 in the magazine The Russian Messenger, under the title 1805. Tolstoy was not satisfied with this first version. Between 1866 and 1869, he rewrote the entire work from the ground up and gave it its final title, War and Peace. Throughout this process, his wife Sophia copied out his manuscripts by hand again and again. Some accounts say she wrote out the full text as many as 7 times, which meant copying an enormous novel by hand, 7 separate times from beginning to end. Yasnaya Polyana is open today as a museum, and the very rooms where Tolstoy lived and wrote this enormous novel can still be visited by the public. Tolstoy himself refused to fit the work into any ordinary category. He said it was neither a novel nor a poem, but simply what he wanted it to be in the form he wanted to give it. These years at Yasnaya Polyana were the most productive of both his family life and his writing career. Born into a landowning noble family, Tolstoy knew this vast estate and the world of the surrounding aristocratic families intimately, and that familiarity found its way directly onto the pages of the novel. Later in life, Tolstoy underwent a profound moral and religious transformation, and by several accounts he came to view fiction, even a work as monumental as this one, with far less regard than he once had. Even so, War and Peace remains the book that carved his name into world literature. War and Peace covers the period of Napoleon's invasion of Russia, spanning roughly the years 1805 to 1820. The novel weaves together the lives of 5 aristocratic families, painting a full portrait of Russian society at the time. 3 characters form the heart of the book. Andrei Bolkonsky, a skeptical soldier questioning the meaning of both war and life. Pierre Bazukov, an idealist who unexpectedly inherits a great fortune but struggles to find his place in the world, at one point turning to Freemasonry as he searches for meaning. And Natasha Rostova, one of the most vivid and changeable characters in the book, a young woman who lives through love, heartbreak, and growth all at once. When Andrei is badly wounded on the battlefield at Austerlitz, lying on his back and staring up at the sky, questioning the glory and ambition he had once chased so fiercely, it becomes one of the most quoted passages in the entire novel. The Rostov family is portrayed as a warm, generous aristocratic household that gradually slides into financial trouble. The elderly prince who heads the Bolkonsky family, by contrast, is a stern, disciplined figure who makes harsh demands on his own daughter. Pierre's capture by the French during the retreat from Moscow, and the entirely new outlook on life he gains through that ordeal, forms one of the most transformative stretches of the whole novel. The novel moves through battlefields, including the historic clash at Borodino, and through the burning of Moscow, while handling ballrooms, family dinners, and love letters with the same mastery. Tolstoy's narration does more than tell a story. He weaves long philosophical discussions on history and war directly into the narrative flow, and the closing section of the book reads almost like a long essay on whether history is shaped by great men or by countless small decisions. Roughly 160 real historical figures are mentioned in the book, directly or indirectly, which shows just how tightly the novel weaves fiction and documented history together. The novel consists of 4 volumes and 15 books, along with an epilogue, and is said to contain more than 500 characters in total. Carrying this many characters and this much plot at once, the novel pulls the reader into both a family drama and a war epic. The characters age across the years, marry, suffer losses, go off to war, and come back, giving the novel the natural rhythm of a real-life unfolding. Many critics regard Tolstoy's ability to carry this many characters at once as one of the greatest technical achievements he left to literary history. How Natasha changes by the closing sections of the book has long been debated among literary critics, some reading it as natural growth, others as a disappointment. One reason War and Peace is still read is Tolstoy's gift for writing characters like real people. Andrei, Pierre, and Natasha appear on the page as people who live, change, and make mistakes. Leading writers of the era, including Dostoevsky, Turgenev, and Goncharov, admired the work. Years later, Virginia Woolf asked who, other than the author of War and Peace, could possibly be called the greatest novelist. The book also offers a deep inquiry into how history actually works, asking whether great men or countless small decisions truly shape events. These questions remain relevant even 2 centuries later, which is exactly why the novel continues to be read not only as a portrait of an era, but as a genuine thought experiment about human nature and the mechanics of history. The novel is regarded as one of the longest works in world literature, a scale that turns it into less of a book to finish in one sitting and more of an experience to live with over an extended stretch of time. Even today, many writers and readers alike use War and Peace as the reference point whenever they write or read a sprawling novel that spans years and generations. There is an interesting linguistic feature in the novel. The Russian aristocracy of the period spoke French in daily life, so the book contains long stretches of French dialogue, just as it would have happened in reality. The English text available today is itself a translation, rendered from Russian into English by the husband and wife team Aylmer Maude and Louise Maude. The novel has been adapted for film and television many times. One notable version was the 1956 film, in which Audrey Hepburn's performance as Natasha earned her a BAFTA nomination. In the decades since, the novel has been adapted repeatedly as a television series as well, a sign that its reach extends well beyond the cinema screen and into everyday popular culture. That is exactly why the novel is still held up as a masterpiece, not only for its portrait of an era, but for its sheer technical achievement as a piece of storytelling craft. Besides the Maude translation, several other translators have brought the novel into English over the decades, a sign of how continuously the book keeps being read anew in different languages. That so many translations exist is itself evidence that each new generation keeps rediscovering the novel for itself. We have covered War and Peace, though a work this long and layered can never truly be summarized in one sitting. That makes it an ideal book to listen to in installments, spread out over time. If you'd like to listen to the complete book as an audiobook, you will find the link in the description. Subscribe for more books in this series. Until the next one, remember the simple truth on Tolstoy's pages. Life keeps flowing, even in the middle of war.